realizing that you have to spend money to network and travel to go meet people. And that was a hard hurdle for me to get over, coming from a situation where all of that was provided for me, being in the corporate realm.
How was it like working in big giant companies like Microsoft, Amazon?
Microsoft kind of felt like a country club. Everything moved a little slower. All the tools worked correctly. They'd been around forever. Whereas Amazon has this day one culture. Every day feels like you're literally a startup and you have all the pressure in the world on you.
What skills did you learn from those corporations that now you implement in your new business as an entrepreneur?
Alex Booth, a corporate veteran turned digital nomad entrepreneur. With a decade at giants like Microsoft and Amazon, he's now running a customer success consulting firm and an outsourcing agency from Mexico. From climbing the ranks to coaching founders on keeping clients happy and profitable, Alex brings hard-won lessons to the table. Here's his story.
You're essentially a customer advocate without an incentive to sell them on something, which ironically positions you really perfectly to give them a strategic guidance to make an upsell once you've earned their trust, right?
How should they get started with the client success role, or how do they fail? What's the deal with them?
My personal favorite is having a backbone. Someone that's not afraid to say no to a client or tell them when they're wrong is actually a really important aspect as well.
E-coffee with experts.
Hi Alex, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thank you for having me, by the way.
Yes, I know your wife, and I know the DC community is like having you on the show is like, I don't know, butterflies everywhere for me, at least. Yeah, and today I'd like you to introduce yourself first. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm Alex Booth. I'm a digital nomad these days, but prior to that, I was a corporate employee for about 10 years. Started off at a company called YP, moved into Microsoft, climbed my way up to Amazon, and I looked back and I had 10 years of client success experience, and I had a strong desire to be an entrepreneur and live remote. So here I am now living in Mexico and owning a customer success consulting firm, and most recently a outsourcing and placement agency that's just customer success focused.
That's amazing. How long have you been on your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh gosh, only a year and a half actually. I'm pretty fresh into it.
Well, how do you feel? Do you think it's more stressful in the first year, or do you think corporate was more stressful?
That's a good question. I think Amazon was more stressful, but not corporate in general. The first year of Amazon was extremely stressful, but I maybe was a little too relaxed my first year of being an entrepreneur, and then I've had to catch up on all the learnings. But my wife is a successful entrepreneur, so I've been fortunate enough to have a great coach in my corner and someone to help speed up the process.
Yeah, Carl is amazing, as well as you, and I'm pretty sure that after all your experience, your entrepreneurial journey had been like thriving. I think that's my assumption. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and I'll take that.
Yeah, take it.
I'll take what I can get these days.
Yeah. Amazing. One of my questions, like, how was it like working in big giant companies like Microsoft, Amazon? What was your daily routine like there? And also, what skills did you learn from those corporations that now you implement in your new business as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think coming from the corporate world definitely gives an entrepreneur, like a fresh entrepreneur like me, a leg up in a lot of areas and then a lot of ground to make up as well. So this kind of balanced out. But I think what it was like at corporate and the big companies, like totally different, depends on the company. Microsoft kind of felt like a country club. Everything moved a little slower. All the tools worked correctly. They'd been around forever. Whereas Amazon has this day one culture. Every day feels like you're literally a startup and you have all the pressure in the world on you. So completely different organizations, but the scale of each of them, like the impact of what you're doing is it's pretty large, and looking back, it's really a great experience to have had. But I think how it's helping me with entrepreneur world is understand how businesses can operate at a high level, where they can be efficient, how they have won over their customers, what they do to not lose customers and stay competitive. So those skills I've kind of been able to learn at an earlier stage, but things like spending money to build a business or networking or sales is something that I've really had to learn over the last year and a half, and I'm jealous of all the entrepreneurs out there that already have those skills.
Interesting. So you're saying networking, sales. What was the third one?
I would say networking, sales, and spending money on their business.
What do you mean? Like creating ad budgets or building an office or?
So building an office, yeah, building out tools, realizing that you have to spend money to network and travel to go meet people. All
Oh,
these
yeah.
things I never had to do. So it's just kind of interesting realizing that it's an absolute necessity to have to spend money in order to get your business to move forward. And that was a hard hurdle for me to get over, coming from a situation where all of that was provided for me, being in the corporate realm.
Yeah, that's a big takeaway to many agency owners who just start out doing everything by themselves. So they feel like they don't really spend the money because they just spend their time, but time
Yeah.
is also money. But like you don't actually actively put money on, I don't know, an ad campaign or that plane ticket or that conference ticket. Interesting. I do know that many companies also send people. I mean, I'm pretty sure like Amazon also like sponsored a lot of employees to go and network on behalf of the company.
Yeah, there's a lot of traveling at a certain level in a corporate world. There's a lot of networking. My job working as a client success manager and then eventually building out customer and client success teams, we were working primarily with like the big vendors at Amazon, so these household names. And a lot of times we're going out to dinner or flying to New York to review products. And yeah, there's a lot of networking involved in that. I didn't personally have to spend any money, and I'm realizing how nice that was to have someone do.
Yeah, that's correct. So let's talk about your experience as a client success manager and now a company owner who serves other companies to build out client success. It's also a new term for me, actually. Like I heard the word client success probably 2 years ago. I'd like to know more about the role. What does it entail? Is it just customer service? Is it something else?
A lot of people think of it as just customer service. You're not alone. It's kind of, I think defining customer success has been a big challenge for the industry. I think the easiest way to think about it is it's account management taking out the sales incentive. So account management has potentially a quota and their compensation is tied to a sales quota. That tends to lead towards their relationship with customers being more driven towards profit and them trying to sell something. And if you remove that, then those account managers are a lot more inclined to actually help the customer and be there as an advocate and give them real strategic guidance. That's a really basic way that I'm going to put it, but you're essentially a customer advocate without an incentive to sell them on something, which ironically positions you really perfectly to give them a strategic guidance to make an upsell once you've earned their trust, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so because when I think of customer service doesn't, in my head, include strategy. It doesn't include account management skills. So would you say that client success is both account management, customer service, and strategy building?
Yeah, so if someone has an account management team in place, nowadays it's either you have one in place or you have a customer success team that's kind of a hybrid. But they would essentially drive strategy that would work cross-collaborative across those different organizations, customer service, product team, sales, account management, and they would try to impact how their operation or how they're operating based off of customer impact, retention, and customer satisfaction. So trying to improve their operations and how they're actually impacting the customer at an individual department level to essentially just improve the customer journey. And the better the customer journey is, the more sticky your service or product is, and the more likely they are to stick around.
Yeah. Actually, I want to share with you this, but at our agency, for example, we have project managers for every client, or maybe multiple clients would share a project manager. And lately, our project management team was semi-trained to do upsells. So we sell link building and digital PR. So that's kind of very quantitative product service, I would say, right? But do you think is this part of the client success too, or is that now sales? And is it necessary for client success?
Yeah, I think any organization that speaks with the customer can essentially make an upsell, but it is a large part of client success is making upsells, but it's not the biggest driver of the purpose of customer success, because you might as well go back to just being an account management if you're going to be driven solely by driving upsells, because if that's where your employees are being based off of, they're likely going to be far more inclined to, make a sale versus guide the customer in a strategic direction, whether that's up, down, or cross sell. So I would say yes, it's customer success as long as they're being actually strategic with their answers or with their guidance.
Okay, that makes sense. But if you were to approach a client right now, say like a SEO client who SEOs mainly serve SEO strategy, link building, content, and some technical SEO, which again, it takes a lot of time and it will take time for it to pay off. So this is the journey of SEOs. What advice would you give them? Like how should they get started with the client success role, or how do they fail? What's the deal with them?
Yeah, I think a lot of people fail by not taking the initial step of figuring out what their client's goals are. So being really clear, what are your goals? Aligning on them together, making sure that you're in alignment, that they're achievable, right? And then revisiting those goals and tracking progress with them regularly. Obviously, there's going to be things that you would say maybe you're in the weeds of, maybe you're really focused on a campaign or what's going wrong or all these small fires. But if you're getting lost in those conversations and you're not revisiting that core conversation over and over again, that's usually where people make their first mistake, and it's usually the most fatal mistake, is by not having some type of a North Star that everyone's aligned at the beginning, because that conversation, every time you revisit it, gives you an opportunity to give strategic guidance, to act as a partner on their team. And it's really making your client realize that you actually are, being strategic partners with them versus, them just being a customer for you.
I see. So for example, let's put it into practice. So some of the small fires that could happen and people get lost in the weeds, like maybe the anchor text wasn't right and now the client has to tell the SEO agency that, hey, I don't like this anchor text, fix it. So the SEO agency spends a lot of energy and manpower to go do that, and kind of time passes by with all these mini problems, but they never really talk about, for example, number of leads that generated through organic search, or any traffic increase or decrease over the month. Is that where I'm heading?
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Essentially, there needs to be revisiting what's the overall objective to make sure that no one's getting lost in the day-to-day fires, as we've called them. But yeah, I think that's a good example.
Awesome. What other examples can you share with us that maybe not SEO focused, but like anything that you have seen recently with a client of yours?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to stretch out customer support teams or customer service teams, or maybe even put some responsibility on their sales team to do customer success activities, whether that be owning retention or being responsible for gathering customer feedback and coming up with a strategy, or growing existing customer accounts, right, with upsells, without giving them the proper training on how to essentially go about it as a partner with your clients versus coming at them with, let's say if I'm trying to gather feedback, I'm just blasting out feedback with a quick turnaround ask with no context, and I'm maybe sending it too frequently. It's a problem for them, but it's annoying, right? Or if sales is the one, responsible for making an upsell, and they're coming in with their typical sales energy without being, having a reason why they should be, making this upsell purchase, that could definitely be a problem. Or if customer support or service is responsible for maintaining retention, but they don't have strategies in place to actually address retention issues or look at the data, it's not fair for any of those teams to take on those responsibilities without the proper training. So I think because a lot of companies are not familiar with customer success being its own its own industry, its own position or expertise area, I'm seeing a lot of companies hearing these buzzwords like retention or churn and floating around, and they're wanting their teams to handle them, but they're not putting in the proper support systems for their team. So I'm seeing that being kind of an issue right now, which is kind of opening up the industry for people like myself to work with other companies from all various sizes and backgrounds.
Okay, I think this was to summarize. Basically, your answer is the number one issue that currently agencies or other companies have with client success is that they give it to the person whose sole goal is to make more sales. As a result, it may cause long-term issues to the client because they don't know exactly why they should be paying more for that extra service.
Yeah, I think kind of at just a higher level, it's responsibilities that are falling on teams that aren't trained to manage customer success initiatives.
Okay. So how what are the level of problems that are different with a giant like Amazon versus like a small SEO agency like mine or something? Like if any SEO versus Amazon, what are the client success problems that are common and different in both cases?
Yeah, they're actually all pretty similar. It's really
No way.
surprising.
I could be like
Yeah.
Amazon, you're saying?
You're absolutely on your way. I can tell already. No, I think it's shocking how unorganized a company like Amazon could be, like a big company. But one thing like they have, are you saying, or did you ask like what problem they're facing that also is like relatable to someone else?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's going to be obviously getting the right people in place is going to be one. So they go through a lot of churn with employees, and when you don't have the same people in place, your clients get fatigued from having multiple different people to talk to without building a relationship.
Yeah,
I think that's a common one.
I can
I think
imagine that
also
one.
not being having people that are good at being data driven is also a really common problem across a big company or a small company.
Sure, but like a client success person should be also a very data-driven person, you're saying?
Yeah, they absolutely should. So
Okay.
they should be able to look at data and make recommendations across their entire organization based off of.
Okay. And what are some client success problems that could be relevant to smaller companies, but not for someone like Amazon and Microsoft?
Yeah, maybe not having the data, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So yeah, same. I mean, yeah, and I have no data. Okay. So data, we're talking what churn? What type of
Yeah,
KPI?
I think churn is definitely a good one. It depends on what industry you're in, what data is going to be relevant. But just having data in general of how many clients you have, what's their satisfaction level, how likely are they to promote your brand. That's kind of the basics. But actually having metrics on their industry or what are market trends typically is something that smaller companies don't have, and therefore you can't be as strategic at guiding your clients because you don't have access to that information.
That makes a lot of sense. Who do you think would be like a great hire for a client success manager or client success person? So maybe agency owners and business owners are listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm ready to start this department, but who should be my key player to hire in this role?
I don't usually have a traditional answer where it's someone that has a ton of customer success experience. I think the number one qualities I look for in someone that is going to be successful at client success is, do they exemplify ownership? So do they have a strong sense of ownership? So when they answer your interview questions, are they saying that I took this to someone and they did that? That would probably exemplify that they didn't have maybe a lot of ownership in that particular example, versus someone really breaking down exactly what they did, how they contributed to everything, they took on the responsibility. So someone that exemplifies a great deal of ownership is a really good indicator. Someone that has agency experience, typically they do a great job at transitioning. And then everyone says this as well, but empathy is a pretty big part about customer success. Having empathy towards clients is definitely key. But my last one, my personal favorite, is having a backbone. Someone that's not afraid to say no to a client or tell them when they're wrong is actually a really important aspect as well.
Maybe my next job should be client success now.
Ooh, you got a backbone?
I do.
I believe it.
And with the help of AI, you can just say no very kindly. So great. I recently explored a negotiation chat GPT where I'm negotiating with like some sponsorship deals and I was like, how do I ask for a lower price? And then I would just put all my notes, like, which is super messy, right? It's the notes from my brain. So it's all of it messy. But then I copy and paste it into this GPT bot and it just spits out this beautiful email that sounds so polite and still asks for what I want. I'm like, wow, that was a great time saver for me.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it saves time. You don't have to wait to calm down and then reread your email before sending it.
yeah. The only problem I have sometimes I forget the attachment, but I think this with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening AI, please fix this problem, the attachment problem.
Did you forget your attachment? Question mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, client success is a difficult role. I mean, I can hear like you need to be more, first of all, responsible. Yeah, that's a big skill. I noticed that not everybody has responsibility in a work environment, and then also strategic thinking as well as an unbiased approach with data. So yeah, like this role is not an easy one. So I'm not surprised that agencies still don't have that implemented yet all the time. Often it's still the owner who do these conversation with the client. So the owner is often the sales and the client success and the ops.
Yeah. And what I've learned being an entrepreneur, as owners, we really need to be selling in our business and kind of be the face of our business. So at some point, letting go of the client relationship or finding someone that you trust to actually work with your clients, not scare them away and grow their accounts is really important. So I think it's a path that everyone's going to have to cross it.
Yeah. Do you have like a basic tracking method or sheet where you track these growths for client success? So sales would be like tracking number of leads and conversions, but how does a client success manager do the same tracking?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of having a scorecard.
Scorecard.
Right, of your top line metrics with your client. Again, it could look different depending on the industry that they're in. And then on top of that, let them have their weekly meetings and stuff. But I'm a huge proponent of running monthly business reviews in a document, not necessarily having a meeting. You can have a meeting to review the document if you want, but customer success managers being responsible for completing a monthly business report, explaining why the metrics are where they are and what they've accomplished month over month or year over year and where they're going in the next month, right? And if they're on track with their goals. And then repeating that process for a quarterly business review. But at the quarterly business review, changing direction because you're at your goal already or you're far behind it, and what initiatives you set out at the beginning of the quarter need to be adjusted and reassessed.
Yeah, I think that's a very quite standard way to track as well. I hope that our listeners can learn from it and take this into action, because without action, there's nothing happening. Thus, the client will never be happy. I noticed that in our conversation, we mostly talked about service-based businesses, but you think it's the same for product businesses too?
Yeah, especially if, in the same for having a client success manager or the
like
tracking.
client success.
Yeah, so I think where I was a client success manager at Amazon, or my team was as well, we're working with big product brands, right? And if they invest in launching a new product, they need someone on, say, Amazon side or internally to collaborate with all the different teams to ensure that they're building the right product, that it has market value, and that their launch goes successfully. A lot of times teams don't communicate great together, so having someone be responsible for that, making sure advertising dollars are being spent at the right time, or the supply chain is working correctly. Someone can be the voice of kind of that connects all of the different pillars together. So essentially like the glue, right? So I think it's actually a little bit more of a cross-collaborative role in a product-first company versus a service-based company.
Yeah, amazing. What are the other tips you wanna share about client success if you were to talk to other agency owners or business owners?
Yeah, I think don't be scared to ask your clients what they think about you. I've noticed that a lot of agencies are really scared to do that. I think if they're positive, right? If the feedback is positive, don't be also scared to ask them for a referral or ask them for a testimonial. Your marketing team is going to love to be able to use that information. You'd be surprised how big of advocacy that you might have with your clients. And also, if you get negative feedback, it's really helpful. It's really, it's information that can actually help change your team and fix a problem that you might have to deal with down the road that gets larger and larger and is more impactful.
I agree. When I was working in operations in the agency, now I work in marketing, but at the time I would pay attention to really bad feedback. So if people were extremely unhappy, I would actually copy and paste and screenshot it and save it. And we spend a bit of time processing it and create sort of a presentation deck, okay, this was a problem, guys. But remember, your worst client is your best client because they actually tell you where you messed up. So in a way, they are the most painful one, but they tell you the truth so you can improve and stuff. So I remember having that mini deck, and I was kind of preparing how to tell my team the bad news. Hey guys, we messed up, but again, as a leader, you don't want to kill morale and motivation. But it's fine because you can fix this. But yeah, there's a whole different game whole different mindset here.
That is totally a client success move right there, what you did with that. So yeah, if you ever want to be a client success manager, I know you got your own thing going on. I know you. I know you could be a good one though.
Thank you, thank you. It's at the time I was project manager mostly, but honestly, any manager is just kind of share similar qualities, how to keep everyone okay so that we can all work together for a goal and then have a vacation every once in a while and just have a good life. And that's how I look at my job sometimes.
Oh, and so you're living for those vacations. I like it.
Yeah, or make your life a vacation, which is like kind of what the dynamite circle is for. I don't know. I have this DC sticker on my microphone just to remind myself that there's a community out there that kind of lives life as a vacation. Don't you think?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's pretty inspiring the DC group and some of the lifestyles they're all living. And until you see that a few of them have been like inside for 3 days because they had client issues or something went wrong, right? And it's been beautiful outside. That's the tough part, is when you're in a beautiful place and you're the business owner and you're stuck inside. So there's always two sides to a coin, right?
Yes. So, Alex, thank you so much for joining the show. And before I let you go, if people would like to contact you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at consulthuckleberry.com or my other company, getcsm.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so it's just Alexander Booth dash Huckleberry on LinkedIn.
Amazing, amazing. I'll link everything down in the description. And Alex, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
See ya.